Hey there, welcome to our channel. Let's continue with our series. In the previous episode, we have seen how we can create our card, right? So what are the ways we can create our card and what are the considerations we need to keep it, right? So while we are making the card functionality. So I have explained everything in a monolithic way and microservice way as well as. So in this episode, we are going to implement all these things, at least the monolithic way we are going to implement in the source code. So let's dive into the source code first, right? So here in the inside the source code, right? So if you go to our handlers and inside the handlers, you can see we have one handler that is called user handler. So let's open this user handler, right? And inside this user handler, you can see we have some routes that is dedicated to our cards, where we are adding the card items and get the card items. So at least we are going to cover today this add to card and get card functionality, right? And before that, we will see like how the profile and the get profile stuff is already covered. If we go to our function, this create profile, you can see it is also not covered, right? So maybe we can handle this two functionality as well as. But most importantly, first of all, we are going to cover this card. So at least while we are patching our profile, then together we can get the card data as well as, right? So that is also a part of our story, right? But let's focus on the card first. And while we are going to call add to cart functionality, all right, then definitely our user has to be authenticated first. Because while we are adding the items to the cart, then our cart to add to cart functionality, that function has to aware about which user is adding the cart items, right? That is we need to figure out. And the similar it's going to happen for our get card as well as, right? To add to cart, so what are the considerations we need to take it right here? So first of all, let's go to domains, and you can see we don't have any cart data right here. And why this cart data is going to be needed, or cart models are going to be needed inside the domain? Because if you see the whimsical diagram right here, and you can see while we have designed our database, then we have separate cart table, right? Where we have our ID, user ID, product ID, name, and all the rest of all the relevant informations. We just kept it right there. And the similar thing we are going to move while we are going to place the order. All the cart items will be convert to where? Convert to our order item, this one, right? So this is pretty much the similar, right? And the order will be going to create because one user can have multiple orders. But one user can have only one card, right? That's why we don't have the card items separately. So we are keeping the card table with all the items, because at any point of time we may change the quantity, right? Or we may change the product, etc. Right? So let's try to implement this card things first. Then we are moving to the order one, right? And here I'm gonna minimize this window. So here inside the domain directory, we are going to create one entity, right? So entity refers to table. So let's create a Go file here, and we're going to keep the name, and that is called our card.go, right? And inside this card.go, we are going to add a couple of codes. That is going to be like type going to be card struct, and inside the card struct, we will be adding all this stuff in terms of ID, or maybe user ID, product ID, right? Then we will be having our name, then image URL, then our seller ID, then price, then quantity, and created and updated that. Created at default and updated that, right? All right, so now we have all the fields, required fields for our card, right? So with the help of all the fields, we're going to create one table that is called card. So let's try to add this card table to our migration. So in that case, what we need to do, let's go to our main.go file, and let's go to our start server. Inside this start server function, we're running our migration. So that is called db auto migrate. So let's try to break it down, maybe this way. So this is going to give us the flexibility to our view all the tables, migrated tables, right? So one more table we need to add, that is going to be our domain card, right? Perfect. So as soon as we are going to start our application, then our new table is going to be created by our migration, right? So now let's try to close this one and this one as well as. Now our cart table is ready. So let's go to our user handler, and inside this add to cart function, right? So we need to grab the request, right, from our user. So how we can grab the request? So here inside this DTO directory, we are going to create one more file. This is going to be our shopping cart request, right? Maybe shopping request. So it's request.go, right? Or maybe we can say shopping request DTO.go. So inside this DTO file, we are going to keep all type of the shopping requests, right? So you can split it up in different files as well as, but it makes sense to keep all the DTOs in together in maybe one file. As an example, all the shopping related requests, we can keep it right here. Right. So let's try to create our type. It's going to be our create cart request, right? And inside this create cart request, only two things going to be needed. One is called product ID, and second is going to be our quantity, right? This is going to be our quantity. So these are the two things are needed. So why we kept it the uint? Because we cannot define or we cannot send this product ID as a minus or quantity as minus, right? That's why we are just keeping it uint. And now let's close this out, right? And now here in the add to cart, let's try to grab our request first, right? So inside this request, and we'll be say DTO, and this is not the cart input, and DTO will be create cart request, right? This is going to be empty parameter, empty variable, and right now we are going to grab our request the similar way we did for our rest of other stuff, right? And we are parsing our request from this request object, right? Whatever we have received in our context, and we will be checking for if the error is not nil, then return. It's going to be our rest, maybe bad request error, right? And then we are going to simply pass the context. So this context, right, or how we are passing it on. Yes, we need to pass the message as well. So that is what we are doing for rest of other stuff. So let's try to check how we are parsing. Right. So we are using the short form. Let's say we can just grab this one and go here to the add to cart, right? So let's try to use like this way. So this is going to be more convenient. Please provide valid input, or please provide valid product and quantity, right? So right now we have our request and we have validated our request as well as. But while we're going to call our add to cart, definitely only authenticated user can call this add to cart. But here we don't know like which authenticated user is try to adding the cart items. So that is we need to grab it first, right? So in that case, let's try to grab our user. User will be our in that case like handler, right? Handler service and auth the current user. So this is what we are going to do, right? So in this case, we will be going to grab our authenticated user. First of all, let's try to compile this error, right? So at least we can say log.println and let's say user. So it's not going to complain anymore, right? We have our authenticated user. So at this point, we need to create our cart, right? So in that case, call our user service, user service, and perform create cart, right? And in that case, let's try to return our cart items, right? And error, and we will be saying handler.service.add to cart, right? So let me see like what are the functions are available here. So we can say not add to cart, it's called create cart, right? And create cart only accept what? It's accept the request as well as. So if we can see it has the input as any, and second input is our domain name, right? So in the first input we can say request, right? This is what we are receiving right here, and second input will be our user, right? So now it's compliant, and we will check if the error is not equal nil, then we'll be returning some kind of error. Return we can say rest, right? So we have already helper function, and we will say internal error and context the error. So in this case, we can return the particular error as well as, or maybe we can customize the error, right? And if there are no any kind of errors are there, right? Then what we can do, we can simply return our data. As an example, we can say return rest.success response and context the cart items. So we can say the message is a cart, or maybe cart cart created successfully, right? Or successfully created the cart item. So that is you can assign it accordingly, right? Now our add to cart function is done, right? So this part, at least the handler part is done, right? So we can purely remove this part, right? Now let's go to our create cart function in the service. So where exactly it is residing? It is inside this our user service, right? So inside this user service. So let's go here, create cart. So here inside this create cart function, we're going to add some code. All the codes we are going to add step by step. So first step, check the cart, check if the cart is exist, and if it is exist, right, then update the cart, right? And that is what we need to do. And second thing, like if any kind of delete request is there, let's say if there because we are going to use only one single function to handle everything in terms of like I create the cart, update the cart, delete the cart, everything we're going to handle. So here inside this create cart function, we're going to add some code that is going to handle all the operations in terms of like create, update, and delete, right? You can split it up in separate functions as well as, but we are going to separate all those stuff while we are going to put our hands on GraphQL. As of now, let's try to keep it in one. And first of all, what we are going to do, we'll be checking it out, like whether if the cart is exist, right? Check if the cart is exist, right? And second, what we will do, we will check like if the cart doesn't exist, then create one, right? Then here we could say like create one, then create cart, right? Then if the cart is exist, right, and if it's a kind of like, maybe you can say if the cart is exist and if we received any kind of input that is quantity 0 or something, that means we are going to delete the cart items. So then what we need to do, we need to delete the cart item. Let's say delete the cart item, right? So create cart is for our fresh items. That is going to be like if the cart doesn't exist, then create one. And this is maybe we can say one step down, right? Maybe something like this. And if the cart is a fresh one, then create one. And if it is already exist, right, and it's needed to update something, then update the cart items, right? So these are the things we are going to handle in two ways, right? Now we have all the operations here in the create cart, right? And definitely we need to add all the functions, all the functionality inside this our user repository. Let's go to user repository here, and we will be adding a couple of functions here that is going to support to perform our cart operations, right? And some of you already asked me the way we have added all the interfaces, right, for our user repository, right? And that is the same thing we can do. Can we do in our user service as well as? Definitely yes. That is the part intentionally I'm just keeping it back, right? Because while we're going to test it out, then I'm going to show you what is the benefit of like adding the interface and not adding the interface, right? That's why we're just keeping it right here. But definitely if you feel free to go add all these things to interface, right? Then make sure like while you're instantiating your user interface, right, user service, you need to handle it accordingly, right? The way we have handled in our user repository. Perfect. So here, let's try to add some code quickly, right? That is going to support our create cart function. I have added all the required functions to this interface. Let's try to implement right here. Alright, so now we have imported all the functions. So let's try to add some code quickly, then we're going to explain everything one by one. Perfect. We have added all the codes to the functions, right? So let's try to understand one by one, right? So here the pine cart items, right? So here we are just simply creating one array of domain cards. And we're finding out all of the cart items, right? All of the carts by looking at the user ID. And if you see in the cart model right here, inside this domain, right, the cart entity, you can see we have assigned the cart user ID here, right? So where we can find it out all of the cart items by user ID, right? And later stage, what we are going to do, we're going to add this cart stuff, right? Add this cart to our user, like we're going to introduce like one-to-one relationship, right? Then we're going to add the card right here. Then once you are going to fetch the user, then you will get the card as well as, right? Because those part we're going to cover while we're going to work on our order section. So because while we need to find it out what is the recent card and the orders, then we are going to query the user. Then we will be preload the card and the orders accordingly, right? So now let's go here again to the repository, okay, user repository. So this is the way we are finding out all of the card items, right? And finally, once we able to find out all the cards, then we are returning the cards, or otherwise we are returning error as well as, right? So if the card definitely it is if there are no any data, then definitely it will going to return empty array. So in the similar thing, it's happening with the defined card item. So you can see only one card item we are finding it out. That is going to be like because we are not bothered at all about this ID, right? So while it comes to the delete the item on the card, then only we are going to use. But in the normal use case, what we are going to do, we need to find out the card item, then definitely product ID will be unique here, right? So card can have the product ID, one product ID for one user, right? And this is the combination, though we have not added any unique constraint here, but while we are going to query, then we are going to consider our user ID and product ID together to find out that unique the card item from there. So these things we are doing right here. You can see find card item. We can say the card item is a kind of empty variable at this moment, right? And we are querying the data while our user ID is provided user ID and the product ID is provided product ID, and find that the first item from the card item and return it back. And for the create card, we are doing the same thing, just like simply we are in the create card, we are simply passing the card object right here, domain card, and we are creating this the card from here, right? And the update card, this is very simple, just like create card. We are simply providing that particular the card stuff, because while we are going to update, then we need to find the card item, right? And then this particular card, domain card, will be returned. Then we are going to make some modifications from here, find card item by user ID and product ID. Then we're going to update the parameters in terms of maybe quantity, maybe price, or whatever, right? And you can see this is very simple thing. While we are updating the card stuff, then we are returning the card as well. So this particular clause specific statement that is called clauses, the clauses returning, this is going to return all of the item back. And while we're querying, you can see we're using the very simple query in terms of like ID. So that is the ID is passing it from our card domain here, right? And once this is done, then we're returning the error, like if it is successfully updated or not. If it is not updated, then definitely it will return some kind of error. Otherwise, it will return nil. So here in the delete card by ID, that is we need to tackle it. Let's say user has added 2 or 3 products. And user decided to remove one of them. Then we need to give the options for delete the card item by ID. So this is the way we're going to remove it. Simply we are passing it on the ID, right? This is the way delete, and we're providing the card model and the card entity right here, and we are simply saying the ID, right? So there is no any explanations going to be needed to delete this stuff. Finally, the delete card items. So once we proceed further with the create order, then definitely the card items is going to be converted to the order items, right? So in that case, all of the card items going to be redundant after create the order. Then delete card items going to call, then it will going to delete all of the card items by finding the user ID, because only one card can be exist per user, right? So this is the way we are going to handle all of the functions from our repository. So let's try to implement all these things in our user service here. All right, so now let's add some code to find out the existing card ID. So we will check whether our card is exist or not. So here card, and we are not going to use the error from here. Then we will say s.repo dot find card by user ID. Find card items. Let's say find card items. find cart item, right? User ID and input.product ID, because while we are going to add the cart, then only if you see in this request, you can see only one product we are going to add at a time, right? So that means while we are going to add the product, then we need to make sure this product is already exist or not in the cart, right? By user ID. That's why we are using right here. You can see we are using the user ID and the product ID, right? So this way it will going to give us that particular item is exist or not. All right, so now we have our cart here. So let's try to verify whether our cart data is exist or not, right? So in this case, what we are going to do, we will check like if the cart.id, right? So ID is greater than 0, then definitely the cart is exist, right? Then what we are going to do, then delete and update functions, delete and update. These two functions we are going to handle inside here. Otherwise, else we're going to create the functions, create the cart here, right? So this is the way we are going to handle. So at least we can keep our code a little bit clean, right? So now, what are the scenarios going to happen first, right? First of all, we will check like if their input, all right, the input dot quantity is at least the product ID. Product ID is product ID is less than 1 or maybe equal 0. Let's say if you are providing some kind of like not valid product ID as an example, maybe we can verify this one in our services itself, right? Like, you know, while we're sending this data from our handler from here, we can verify it here as well as, or maybe you can verify it here also, right? So this is just simply use case. You can say it's a kind of guard function. We are going to add it here. So if quantity can be 0, right? So if you see here, you can see like we have our quantity that can be 0, and because for delete use case we are accepting 0, but product ID should not supposed to 0, all right? So that's why we're saying like if the product ID is equal 0, then we are going to return some kind of error, return nil, and we are saying error, please provide a valid product ID, right? And this use case is covered. Now let's handle this delete cart item use case, right? So in this case, we will say if the input quantity is less than 1, then we're going to delete, perform the delete operation, right? Then otherwise we're going to update this stuff, right? So in this case, let's go ahead here. You can see error we're accepting from our repository, and we're gonna say like the repo.delete cart by ID, and because this is the card exactly coming from here, and we are checking it out. If any kind of errors are happening, then we're returning this error from here, right? And then the this input part is done, right? Like then this delete part is done. Then let's move to our update part. This one we can just remove from here, and in update part we're gonna say like if the quantity, whatever the quantity is it's greater than 0, maybe. Here we are checking it out like the 0 case, and here we are checking it out if the quantity is greater than 0, then update the quantity accordingly. Then this one we're going to update the cart. So you can say update cart, yes, domain cart, and assign. Okay, so here only the errors are there. There should not supposed to be the second parameter. That's why it was giving the error. So we're accepting the input quantity, and we are performing the update operations from here, and we're checking it out. If there are kind of error, then we are just like providing the errors. And in this case, let's say you can directly return, instead of this return, all right, the error, you can log the error, right? Log.println the, let's say error on deleting cart, or maybe you can say error printf. You can say error on deleting cart items, and instead of this error, we can show something to user that is going to be errors.new text, error on deleting the cart items. And similar error we can just pass it on here as well. Say error on updating cart, right? And finally, see here in the body cases, we have deleted our cart and we have updated our cart, and finally we need to return the cart, right? To return the cart, so we had our domain interface, that is I have already changed. That was in earlier, what was that? It was like only interface. Let's say something like this, right? Interface. It was interface, right? Like this. So because if we are providing the interface, then definitely it cannot return the updated cart item. So that's why we had to change this one to our domain.cart, right? And right now, what we need to do, once all of the operations has been done, then finally let's try to fetch it out. Like we can say return s.repo dot find card items, right? Find card items. So in this case, we need to provide the user ID. So that means all of the delete operation and update operations are done, then we will be getting the updated card items from here. Now let's handle the create card items. So in this case, error, we will say s.repo the create card. Then inside this domain, we need to provide all of the required stuff in terms of product.product ID, input.product ID. Then we will say user.user ID, right? But a couple of things going to be needed. As an example, the product name, product image URL. You can see if you hover it, you can see all of the information: name, seller ID, price, unit, where we will get it. So to get all the stuff, we need to call first the product information, right? So let's try to find the product information. Check if product exists, right? Because here, as a kind of input, we're going to receive the product ID. So let's try to do that. So product and error, and we will say s.repo find product by input.product ID. So this is going to be product ID, find product. I think we don't have any product repo right here. So let's go ahead on the top. Maybe can we find the product repo here? Yeah, we don't have the product repository. So let's try to add the product repository here, the P repo, or maybe P, or you can say C repo for catalog repository. So yeah, catalog repository, you can say C repo. That's going to be meaningful. So let's go here and down. Then we are going to say this is not going to be s.c repo, then find product by ID. So now we are getting the options for find product by ID, right? So it is we need to convert to a int, right? And now we have our product. So we will check it out if the product exists, right? If we don't have any error, if error is not equal nil, right? Then we can say product not found, or otherwise the other way around also you can find it out. Just like we are not caring about the error, then we will be simply checking it out whether our product.id has the value or not. 0, let's say. This is the way also you can evaluate the error, right? Now if the product doesn't exist, then it's going to return from here product not found to create card item, right? Then here this product information we can utilize right here also to create the card. So let's try to do that. In the right after the user ID, this one, you can say, then we will say name will be product.name. Then the quantity will be input.quantity, definitely, all right? Then the price product.price, because we are not accepting the price from our front end. It can be changed or it can be injected by our client as well as, all right? So that's why just for safer side, we're only just like querying the product information, and we are just like adding the updated product price from there, right? And finally the seller ID. Seller ID will be product.seller ID. Product.user ID, I think. Yeah, product.user ID. Product doesn't have the seller. I think product has the user ID, right? So let's go to product maybe. Let's go to product. Maybe what you can do, let's go to domain in the product. Yeah, we have ID, we have user ID, right? So this user ID is a kind of seller for this product. Okay, so now, but we need to cast it. Let's convert it to uint. Now I think everything is done right here. So we have our user ID, we have our product, we have our name. Maybe image is missing. Image URL, this is, we can grab it from our product.image URL, right? Now we will check it out whether if we have any error. If we have the error is not equal nil, then return, we can say error under creating card items, right? And otherwise, if everything goes well, then finally we can return the same thing, same function, right, from here, right? Cool. So now can you see, like, this is pretty cool, right? Or otherwise we can just simply move this function, right? This is This is, we can keep it on bottom side rather than keeping it here. Let's try to delete from here, right? Then only one place we are patching it out, like throughout the whole condition. So I think this create cart functionalities right now it's covered, right? So already we have hooked up this create cart functions from here, and then now only the matter of like, we need to test it out. But what we will do, we'll be finding out the cart as well as. So right after adding the cart to the find it out, then we're gonna visit our user profile, and then only we will be moved forward accordingly, right? So that's all for today, and maybe you can just go and give it a try to create find it out how the application is going to run and create the cart. But one thing, don't forget to here, we need to hook up our catalog repository. So where we are instantiating this user service in our start server or maybe route, where our user services we are instantiating. So make sure you're injecting this repository as well as a kind of dependency right there, right? So in the next episode, we are going to handle the next use case where we will be going to find it out the cart by user ID. Okay, cool. Then that's all for today. Then see you soon. Bye.